Welcome to the BA Sports Podcast. We are live after Thursday night football, and we just saw the Giants knock off the Philadelphia Eagles. Cam Skadbu and Jackson Dart were looking very nice as rookies. Skadbu with 3 touchdowns, Jackson Dart with a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. This offense was firing on all cylinders at home in New York. The fans loved it. America loved it, I think. I loved it as a Cowboys fan watching the Eagles lose. Now, hopefully you started Cam Skattebo and Jackson Dart. I thought Skattebo would do well tonight. I did not expect this performance from Dart. He looked amazing. Definitely big time bounce back from last week where he did all right, but he did much better in this one. They actually got the win in this one, and it was good to see this offense is humming under Brian Dable. And he has to save his job somehow, and Jackson Dart is that ticket, it looks like, to saving Dable's job. The Eagles are concerning. Jalen Hurts put up a mediocre fantasy performance, decent 20-point game. Saquon, who I did not like coming into this season, struggled yet again. A.J. Brown did all right, 14 PPR points. Dallas Goedert was the go-to target for Jalen Hurts, racking up 9 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. And he was the sleeper for me this week. Devontae Smith sadly didn't do much this week. He could have easily had a 80, 90-yard touchdown, but Jalen Hurts missed him wide open over top, no one near him. Probably like 5 to 10 yards at least between the cornerback and Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts could not connect. He just couldn't do it. And when they're not tush pushing, it seemed like they couldn't do much other than target Dallas Goedert and occasionally A.J. Brown. Saquon couldn't get going on the ground. Jalen Hurts didn't really run the ball that much. Very concerning if you're a Philly fan in Philly sports today. Phillies lose to the Dodgers, and then you watch the Eagles go down to the rival Giants on Thursday Night Football. Bad day for Philly sports fans, but let's get this kicked off with week 6. We're going to go through starts, sits, sleepers, and busts, and then we're going to go through some daily fantasy preview for the game, some cheap plays, a lineup that I made. And then around the league, we're going to do rapid game hits for all the games Sunday morning. Once again, we have another London game, so be prepared. It is an early one. It is Broncos at Jets, kicking off the Sunday slate early in the morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. And then 2 Monday night matchups. We got the Bills at the Falcons, Bears at the Commanders. Both look to be good games. Falcons coming off a bye at home against the Bills. That could be a sneaky one for Atlanta. But before we get into all of that, let's start it off with the start, sits, sleepers, and busts. Thank you all for tuning in to the live stream on X, on YouTube, and through Riverside. So, starting off, we're going to go with our starts of the week. And it's going to be Matthew Stafford at the quarterback position for me. This Ravens defense, we've seen them struggle all year long. They are the worst defense in the NFL, right up there with the Dallas Cowboys. We saw CJ Stroud last week bounce back after some struggles early on in the season. He had the best game of his 2025 season last week against this Ravens defense. Houston is on bye this week, so be cautious about that. Other team on bye is the Vikings, the Minnesota Vikings. But Stafford, last 2 games, he's thrown for over 375 yards and 3 touchdowns with no interceptions. Against Indianapolis, 375 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Against San Francisco, 389 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. I expect him to keep it going. 300 plus yards is easily in the cards for Matthew Stafford this week against the Ravens defense, who just is banged up. They aren't really motivated. Maybe we can see a bounce back from them in this one, but it's going to be a tough one because I think they're still at home, but the Rams are favored by 7.5 points. And not only can Stafford ding you, but Stafford was connecting with Kyron Williams last week. Kyron Williams can get going on the ground. This Rams offense should do well against this Ravens defense. And the Ravens offense just struggles to score points without Lamar Jackson. Cooper Rush, I don't know that he is the answer for this Ravens offense. We've seen Cooper Rush as the Ravens quarterback. Another AFC team, North team that is banged up is the Bengals. Not having Joe Burrow really hurt them. Jake Browning seemingly hasn't got it done. They went and got Joe Flacco. Maybe Joe Flacco helps the Bengals offense. I don't see Cooper Rush helping this Ravens offense, especially this Rams defense, who's looked pretty good through the first couple of weeks of the season. And yeah, that is my start at the quarterback position. Running back position, Rashad White taking over for Bucky Irving. Rashad will get the majority of the work. He saw 80% of the snaps last week with Bucky Irving out. And we saw Kyron kill the Niners through the pass game last week. I was just talking about it. I think White can do the same. White has a solid floor in PPR, but just because of his receiving value and the Bucks offense in general is just a very fantasy friendly offense. We've seen Emeka Egbuka do well. We've seen Baker Mayfield do well, Bucky Irving, Rashad White. Hopefully Chris Godwin can get going this week. That would be fun to see. But yeah, the Niners seemingly struggle against pass catching backs, and Kyron really isn't known for that, but he still made them pay last week. So that's why I like Rashad White. I think he has a solid floor, probably 10 to 15 as the floor, just off receptions and rushing yards. He's going to get the touches, and then he has the potential to reach 20, 25 plus PPR fantasy points. So fire up Rashad White. I like him as an RB2 this week easily in my top 24. And then wide receiver, Lad McConkey is another start for me. I like Herbert and this passing game in general. The thing that worries me the most is that offensive line. It's just tough to watch without the protection for Herbert. He's been struggling a little bit. He struggled last week. Lad did well, though. And I think, he's had a tough start to the season, but we saw him get in the end zone. He would have had an even better day if that punt return touchdown would have counted, but it got called back for holding. This offense is going to have to run through the passing game and especially the short passing game. I think they're at home. Double checking this. No, they're in Miami. So Miami has struggled against pass catchers. Tedder McMillan did pretty decent last week. I think Lad McConkey can do well in this matchup. And in Miami, the Heat's can play a factor. I think, the Dolphins don't really scare me with their pass rush. Now, granted, the Chargers O line is just really banged up, and that is the most worrisome thing for this offense. And if they can just give Herbert a little bit of time, or if they have to get out fast, Lab McConkey is going to be that guy. I think it's going to be harder for him to get the ball to Quentin Johnston down the field, but that is why I like Lab McConkey. I like Keenan Allen. I like both those Chargers receivers. I like Justin Herbert as well this week. But I would probably start Matthew Stafford over Justin Herbert this week. I have more confidence in that Rams offense and Stafford back-to-back weeks of 300 plus yards and 3 touchdowns. Hard to pass that up against the Ravens secondary, who, like I said, is one of the worst in the league from what we've seen so far. Moving on to tight end, David Njoku. Last week, we finally saw a bounce back from him. It just took Dylan Gabriel starting. And Gabriel, I think, will rely on this short area targets yet again. We saw Harold Fanning get into the end zone. I like both Harold Fanning Jr. and David Njoku. They both play a lot of snaps together. They like to play two tight end sets. So last time versus Pittsburgh, I believe was last year. Let me double check that, make sure they haven't played Pittsburgh yet this year. But I believe Njoku got 13 targets last year against Pittsburgh. Maybe double checking that. Anyways, Pittsburgh isn't great against the tight end. They're 26th against the tight end position in fantasy points. And we saw Hunter Henry go off 90 yards, 2 touchdowns against this Cleveland defense. Yeah, they haven't played Cleveland yet. It was 2024 when he played Pittsburgh back in December of 2024. He saw 13 targets, 7 catches, 42 yards, and a touchdown for David Njoku last time he faced this defense. And this defense looks like they're going to have reinforcements coming in. Joey Porter Jr. is expected to be back, and I expect him to cover Jerry Jeudy. So that is why I'm not a fan of Jerry Jeudy this week, and I'll go into him later. But Dylan Gabriel seemed to lean on Njoku and Fannin last week, kind of reliable tight end options for him in the short area game. And I expect them to keep going there. I expect them to lean on the ground and Quinshon Judkins. Play action should open up the tight ends. And yeah, fire up David Njoku this week. Another wide receiver I like is Xavier Worthy. Final game before the Chiefs get Rashee Rice back from his suspension. Detroit's secondary last week. I like the Bengals weapons. I thought Jake Browning would do better, but yeah, he's just Jake Browning, and hopefully Joe Flacco can raise the level of this offense. But so we saw Cincy, we saw Jamar Chase do well. We saw T. Higgins get into the end zone. He had a decent day, and I expect the same thing from Xavier Worthy this week. He's seen back-to-back weeks of 8+ targets. The volume is there. Mahomes is looking for him. The production will come because this defense is 26th versus the wide receiver position in fantasy points allowed. So very, very bad. We saw it last week. Jamar got on track. He had a Jamar game. He had over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, I believe. So that's good to see. Hopefully, Xavier Worthy, we can see that this week. The Chiefs passing game is very underrated, especially with like the weapons that Mahomes has. Travis Kelce is getting old. Tyquan Thornton came on as a top wide receiver for the Chiefs. Xavier Worthy's been banged up, finally back these last 2 games. They don't have Rashee Rice, so guys like Marquise Hollywood Brown are stepping up a little bit. We saw him make some good catches last week, but it wasn't good enough to get the Chiefs the win. I think once Rashee Rice is back in this offense, it's going to open up things for Xavier Worthy a lot more. But this week, the Lions secondary is just so bad. I think Mahomes is going to take full on advantage, especially with the speedster like Worthy, who can get behind the defense. Watch out for a Mahomes deep ball to Worthy or Thornton this week. Should be fun to watch. Fire up Xavier Worthy. I'm fine with starting him as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 flex play in your leagues. Now, let's move into sits. Starting off, this is a guy that may not even play this week, but he's on there because I'm sitting him. Even if he doesn't play, he just hasn't looked good. But let's say he is going to play. I think you're sitting Kyler Murray no matter what because he has a foot injury that limits his scrambling ability, which honestly has been a solid floor for him as a rushing quarterback over the last couple years. Now, granted, he didn't rush a lot over the previous years due to his injury, coming back from the knee injury, but he's ran pretty well this year, and I don't like this matchup for him. They're 7th against the quarterbacks, and the Colts, I didn't like Geno last week, and they stopped him in his tracks from doing anything. I mean, I liked Jacoby Myers last week, and boy, was I wrong about that. The Colts defense did not allow anything to get going for the Raiders offense, and I am worried about Kyler Murray this year in general, just after what I've seen through the first 5 weeks. And now that he's hurt, just is bad. But I think you're sitting him regardless. I like Bryce Young this week over Kyler Murray. I like Sam Darnold over Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford over Kyler Murray. There are a lot of quarterbacks I like over Kyler Murray. So I think you can easily sit him this week, and there should be a better option out there for you in your leagues. Stafford and Bo Nix are the only 2 quarterbacks to score more than 14 points on this defense. So that is also why I do not want to play Murray this week. Sit him, forget it, and hopefully he's healthy next week. And this foot injury doesn't linger for too long because the Cardinals need him to start performing better. Another sit is really the Pittsburgh running back duo. This is the number 3 defense versus running backs. One of the toughest matchups. Jordan Mason was a sit for me last week. He got into the end zone. That was good enough to get him to RB22 for the week. We saw Gibbs do well the previous week, but pretty much every other running back that has faced him has struggled. David Montgomery didn't do well. We saw David Montgomery bounce back last week against Cincinnati. So I'm expecting Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell temper expectations. Jaylen Warren has the potential to get there through his receiving value. He's very good in pass catching situations. If you're playing a PPR league, he can get you there with a solid floor just by catching passes. But either one of these guys, they're gonna have to save the day with a touchdown just because this Cleveland defense doesn't allow a lot of yards to running backs. So be cautious starting Jalen Warren or Kenneth Gainwell. I don't like either of them this week, and I would only consider them as fringe flex plays in deep leagues. Let's move on to the wide receiver bust, and I mentioned him earlier. It is Jerry Judy. Like I said, Joey Porter Jr. looks like he's returning. Gabriel really didn't get it to the wide receivers last week. I expect more short area targets. As I mentioned, I like David Njoku and Harold Finn Jr. Maybe they can get Jerry Judy going this week. If you have to start him, he's a boom bust wide receiver 3. No touchdowns for him this year at all. So that is a big part of why I want to sit him until I see more of an established connection between him and Gabriel. I did not like Jerry Judy coming into this season. His stats were inflated at the end of last year with Jameis Winston at quarterback. No Jameis Winston. Sadly, Jerry Judy has gone back down to not being as good as he could be if Jameis Winston was quarterback. It's not fun, but I think you have to sit him this week. Another sit for me, just because I don't like the quarterback, I don't like this situation, is tight end Mark Andrews. I don't trust this offense without Lamar, and I'm firing up the Rams defense. So I am sitting Mark Andrews this week. I just can't see myself starting him. I would definitely have other tight ends ahead of him, like Mason Taylor, Hunter Henry. Let's see here, Jake Tonges. I like a lot of other guys other than Mark Andrews. Jacoby Myers is another sit for me after being one of the starts of the week last week. He dudded, and I just can't trust him until I see more from Geno Smith, better play from Geno Smith. I thought he would rebound last week, and Jacoby Myers just did not do so. So sit him until further notice. But this could be the week where you sit him and he goes off. Just to let you know, if you have to start him, I'm fine with him as a wide receiver 3 flex play, but I'm not preaching that you have to start him. But the Titans have been very bad this year on the defensive side of the ball. Saw Marvin Harrison Jr. benefit a little bit from that last week. So Jacoby Myers could have a day, especially if Brock Bowers doesn't go. It just helps the concentrated targets towards Jacoby and Trey Tucker. And it was the same situation last week. The Colts didn't have Kenny Moore, and I thought Jacoby Myers was going to do well, but that didn't happen. So proceed with caution if you're going to start him. No, he could bust if you're going to start him, but I would rather sit him this week. If you can, if you have better options out there, sit Jacoby Myers. Sleepers are next up, and it is a quarterback I liked last week. He should have been my sleeper of the week, but I didn't put him there. He's going to probably make my top sleeper quarterback this week. Jacksonville has had a decent defense. They've generated a league high in turnovers, so that is something to caution about. But it is Sam Darnold who is facing this Jacksonville defense, because 3 of 5 teams quarterbacks so far have thrown for 300 plus yards on this defense. They're allowing around 38 to 39 pass attempts per game on average to quarterbacks. So the volume looks to be there this week for Sam Darnold. I think after last week, we saw him go off and throwing the ball all over the field against the Bucs defense, and it paid off. He did really well on the week and was a top quarterback on the week. And I expect the same thing from him. I expect him to get JSN the ball. I expect him to get, hey, AJ Barner didn't look too bad. Hopefully they get Kenneth Walker going, but I'm firing up Sam Darnold this week in deeper leagues as a low end QB1 this week. I like him a lot against this Jacksonville defense. Hopefully he can keep the ball for Seattle and not turn the ball over like quarterbacks seemingly have done over, oh, really the first 5 weeks of the season against this Jacksonville defense. Number 1 in takeaways. So be cautious, Sam Darnold, but I think he has in a good spot to perform well this week. Now, running back sleeper, Ramondre Stevenson. They seemingly just want to get him the ball, whether he fumbles or doesn't fumble. If he doesn't fumble, that's better for them, but he's fumbled almost in every game this year, and they still don't want to turn to Travion Henderson. Antonio Gibson is out for the remainder of the year, I believe. So it's going to be the Stevenson and Henderson show. I like both of them this week. I'm probably starting them as RB2 fringe, RB2 flex plays this week. But Stevenson's been the guy that Vrabel's been preaching about, and he knows that he said in interviews that they want to get Ramondre the ball and they need to run this offense through Ramondre. But the fumbling issue is just a huge factor. And I think Travion Henderson is the much better player. I can't wait to see him get more work with Antonio Gibson out. That's going to be huge for him getting more work. It sucks to see Antonio Gibson out with injury. Hopefully he gets well soon, but my goodness, these two are going to split it 50-50 pretty much the whole way. I think with maybe Stevenson, maybe it's like a 60-40 split in Stevenson's favor. So I like Stevenson as a sleeper running back this week. Wide receiver, this guy was a sit last week. He is a sleeper this week. It is Calvin Ridley. We finally saw him do well. I said sit him until further notice. We saw him do well. Hopefully he can build off that and continue this run at wide receiver. But honestly, he's still kind of a boom bust flex play for me. I'm not starting him uh, in two wide receiver leagues as like a wide receiver two. If you have a better flex play or wide receiver two play, definitely play him over Calvin Ridley. But it is encouraging to see that Ridley did well last week. Now, let's move into the tight end position. Jake Tonges benefiting from all the pass catchers being out. Pearsall and Jennings out again, possibly. I think this bodes well for him and Kendrick Bourne. And Kittle's out another week, so at least another week. And yeah, Tonjes has scored a touchdown in back-to-back games. He's a great streaming option this week. The Bucks let AJ Barner get 2 touchdowns on them last week, so I think Tonjes could get into the end zone yet again for this San Francisco offense, especially with them wanting to take away Christian McCaffrey first and foremost. Defenses are going to be looking out for Kendrick Bourne this week because he exposed the Rams last week. But I like Tonjes a lot, and the Bucks defense is a little banged up in the secondary. So Tonjes, Kendrick Bourne, fire them up. I like Mac Jones as well this week. All of them are good sleeper options if you have to stream this week. San Francisco offense should be in play, in my opinion. And then wide receiver that I think this is one of the more interesting ones. This is possibly my sleeper of the week at the wide receiver position. The number 2 wide receiver against the Jets in 3 out of the 5 games so far, they've benefited. Calvin Austin, week 1, 4 catches, 70 yards, a touchdown. Mecca Egbuka, week 3, 6 catches, 86 yards. Last week, Ryan Flores, 6 catches, 114 yards. We've seen these backup guys take advantage of not having Sauce Gardner guard them. And Sauce Gardner usually guards the number 1. We saw him matched up with George Pickens last week, Mike Evans in week 3, and then DK Metcalf in week 1. So I think he's going to match up easily with Cortland Sutton this week. And this opens up Troy Franklin as one of the top sleeper options. If he's out there, I think he's a good streaming candidate if you need a flex play. 37 targets for Sutton through the 5 weeks so far, 32 for Troy Franklin, second on the team in targets. Bo Nix is looking his way. They have a connection from Oregon in college. They know each other, and Peyton's got them going this year. And it's good to see Troy Franklin get going behind Sutton. They definitely needed someone to step up. Now, they definitely could lean on the run game. J.K. Dobbins has looked good. R.J. Harvey, we've seen some spark out of him. But if they're going to throw the ball, they're going to have Sutton blanketed by Sauce Gardner. And I think Bo Nix is going to be looking for Troy Franklin. So keep an eye out for Troy Franklin, possibly my sleeper of the week. Stay tuned. I'll post it on X on Saturday so you can see all of my start sit sleepers and busts and my top start sits sleepers and busts for the week. Now, let's go into the busts. It's going to be Justin Fields at the quarterback position. I liked him last week. He was start of the week at the quarterback position, but it's been garbage time. Fields, when they're trailing by multiple scores, he's thrown for 3 touchdowns, and he's thrown only 36 times. So he's benefiting a lot. He's thrown for 225 yards, a little less than half of what he's thrown for in any other situation. So when they're not trailing by multiple scores in the fourth quarter, he's thrown for 529 yards, 4 touchdowns on 70 pass attempts. He's had 2 turnovers, 9 sacks. He got sacked a lot last week against Dallas, but he made up for it in the fourth quarter. Him and Garrett Wilson connected, and him and Mason Taylor formed a good connection over these last 2 weeks. But Denver is a different animal than Dallas. They are number 2 in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. So they're not letting quarterbacks score. They also don't let quarterbacks run. So I imagine we could see them get home with some sacks this week. They've played Herbert, Hurts, and Daniel Jones. All of them seemingly love to run the ball. You look at them in any other game and they're running all over the field. But there's a chance he can perform late and make up for this bust call, but temper expectations. I would rather sit Justin Fields. I'm definitely starting Matthew Stafford over him. I would consider Bryce Young, Sam Darnold easily over him. And I'll have to think of some other guys, but those are just a couple off the top of my head that I'm afraid of Fields this week, just because this Denver defense is no joke. Now, running back, this is another guy that hasn't performed well except for week 1. And I'm not sure that this is really a bold call for that situation. Usually my bust calls are the bold ones, like the top guys. And I guess he is a top guy, but he just hasn't been playing like it. The Rams defense is number 2 against running backs, and Derrick Henry just hasn't done so. So he is my bust at the running back position. No touchdowns, rushing touchdowns allowed to running backs this year. We saw Christian McCaffrey get in the end zone off of a pass catching uh, situation, a little out route last week for a receiving touchdown. But other than that, they don't let them score rushing touchdowns. We know Henry doesn't play in the pass game. I expect game script to favor Justice Hill. The Rams offense has been firing on all cylinders, which is why I like Matthew Stafford this week. And the Ravens offense has been really the complete opposite with Cooper Rush at quarterback. They haven't gotten anything going with Lamar Jackson out. So not having Lamar Jackson definitely hurts Derrick Henry, just because Lamar gives a different thought in defenses' heads to, is Lamar going to run it? Is Derrick Henry going to run it? Is Lamar going to pass it? Cooper Rush, they know he's not going to run it. So it's either they're handing off to Derrick Henry or they're going to make Cooper Rush throw and beat you in the pass game. What would you rather do? Load the box and let Cooper Rush beat you in the pass game, or not load the box and have Derrick Henry run all over you? I think I would load the box and have Cooper Rush beat me in the pass game. So I think the Rams are going to do that this week, and I think the Rams are going to stifle Derrick Henry like the other defenses have until we see Lamar get back. So I am avoiding Derrick Henry this week if I can. He is my bust at the running back position. Another wide receiver that I don't like this week, Garrett Wilson. Welcome to Pat Surtain Island. I think he's been here once before, but we saw him make up for points last week in garbage time. I don't know if that happens again. It could happen again, but I'm not banking on it. If you have better options, definitely start them over Garrett Wilson. If you have any questions on whether to start Garrett Wilson or another guy, please let me know. And at me on Twitter at BA Sports Podcast. I'll try and respond to him. Shoot me a DM. I'll try and respond to him. Another player I do not like this week, bust alert, Juwan Johnson. He still saw 85% of the snaps last week, but we did see Taysom Hill come back. And it really is, how much more time is Taysom Hill going to take away from Juwan Johnson the healthier he gets? I don't know. But it is a good matchup for Juwan Johnson. He just hasn't been performing well these last couple weeks. So I'd take Mason Taylor, Jake Tonges, Hunter Henry, David Njoku, Dalton Kincaid, all over Juwan Johnson this week. Juwan Johnson's kind of a boom bust tight end play this week. If you have to stream him, Andy's out there. He's got a good matchup, but he could bust for you. So that is why I'm putting him in the bust category. I'd rather play someone else like Jake Tonges than play Juwan Johnson. So last up on the bust is Marvin Harrison Jr. It could be a struggle without Kyler Murray. Now, maybe Jacoby Brissett is like a godsend for Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know. But Marvin Harrison Jr. struggles versus man coverage, and the Colts run man coverage 25% of the time, which is over league average. And I would be cautious about playing Marvin Harrison Jr., but you're likely not setting him this week unless you have a deep bench. And you might have to fire him up with Jacoby Brissett and hope that Jacoby Brissett gets him some targets this week. All right, let's go into some daily fantasy, and then we're gonna get into some rapid game hits and go around the league really fast, and then wrap this show up. So, quarterback, wide receiver stacks of the week this week for week 6. I like Dak to Pickens and Ferguson. I like Herbert to Ladd or Keenan Allen. And I like Drake May to Stephon Diggs. Some cheap plays. You got Drake May at the quarterback position, Rico Dowdle at the running back position. Also, look out for Rashad White. He's pretty cheap relative to what he's could produce value wise. Travis Hunter's a little sleeper play this week, and then Ryan Flournoy, the Cowboys wide receiver 2, I think going forward, definitely over Jalen Tolbert. And he could be a sneaky option against this Panthers secondary this week. And then Jake Tonges, good value for that 49ers tight end, back to back touchdowns. Could be a good red zone target this week, as AJ Barner was last week. Now, my fade is Chris Olave. I think it's going to be Christian Gonzalez time, and he's going to be covering Olave, traveling with him. We'll see how much. Hopefully, Christian Gonzalez is good to go. He is popped up on the injury report, but he was good last week. So, hoping he's good this week. And then I'll post this lineup on Saturday. It may change a little bit, but Drake Mays, the quarterback, Rico Dowdle, running back, Rashad White, the other running back, Puka Nakua, Stephon Diggs, and Lab McConkey are the wide receiver trio. And then tight end Harold Fannin Jr. saves you some money there. And then you're able to flex George Pickens. And then the Raiders defense should save you some money. It's really going to be the turnover show. I think Raiders versus Titans. I think low scoring game. I like both those defenses. So this is through FanDuel, by the way. The pricing, I don't know how that pricing stacks up for this lineup on DraftKings. I built this on FanDuel. So that is something to be aware of. Let's go around the league, starting off with the game in London. Broncos at Jets. Denver favored by -7.5. Over under is 43.5. I'm starting J.K. Dobbins, and I'm fading the Jets passing game / Justin Fields. Mason Taylor might be a low end tight end one this week, but if you can avoid it, I would probably go Tonjes over Taylor this week. Moving into the main slate, the early slate, it is going to be Cardinals at Colts. Indianapolis is favored by -7.5. I'm wondering if this line just takes into account that Kyler Murray is probably not going to go, but he is my fade. My start is Jonathan Taylor. I'd also consider Michael Pittman Jr. as a start. Over unders 46.5. So this could be a high scoring game. We will see. The Cardinals defense banged up. Kyler Murray's banged up. So just something to keep an eye out. I think the Colts won this game at home, but I would say they win this game at home unless like Kyler plays, and then I think he can propel the Cardinals to a win. But Cardinals after that game last week, hopefully they bounce back this week, because my goodness, that was abysmal, blowing that lead to Tennessee on your home field. Next up, Chargers at Dolphins. This could be a sneaky Chargers upset on the road. LAC is favored. They're favored by -3.5, 43.5. So I guess it wouldn't be an upset, but they could pull it off in Miami. Start Lab McConkey, fade Tua Tagovailoa. I think the Chargers defense gets going against Tua, and they put pressure on him, and it could make him struggle. This Chargers defense needs to get on track. They need to force turnovers for Justin Herbert, and this offense need to get going, especially with their banged up O-line, banged up run game. No Marian Hampton. It's going to be the Kamani Vidal and Hassan Haskins show. So whoever out of the two of them is going to emerge as the running back one for the Chargers, time will tell. I don't really like either of them. Now they have good matchups, so I consider them flex plays this week, but yeah, I think the Chargers do get this done on the road. Patriots at the Saints. New England is favored by -3.5. I'm definitely starting Drake May, and I'm fading Chris Olave. Like I said, I think Christian Gonzalez is going to be tailing him. 45.5 is the over-under. I like Drake May and this offense this week, which is why I'm preaching him in daily fantasy. I think he can do well for your daily fantasy teams and your daily fantasy and your regular fantasy. So start Drake May this week. I like this Patriots offense. Hopefully they can get Travion Henderson going because I am starting him this week, and I would love to see the rookie get going against this Saints defense, who has been not so good against running backs. Next up is the Browns at the Steelers. Pittsburgh's favored by -5.5. Over under is 38.5. I'm starting DK Metcalf and I'm fading Jerry Judy. Not a lot of scoring in this game, so I expect it to be a low one. Good for both defenses. Both defenses are good. It is a divisional matchup, so usually those seem to be lower scoring, except for tonight. Seemed like the Eagles didn't want to play defense, and the Giants just scored as many points as almost they have all season, basically, um, which is crazy, but that is what it is. And a lot of these road teams are favored. Here's another one: the Cowboys at the Panthers. Dallas is favored by -3.5. Over under is 50.5. One of the highest scoring totals, if not the highest scoring. Second, it is second to Sunday Night Football Lions at Chiefs. So the Cowboys at the Panthers, my goodness, I'm starting pretty much everyone on offenses, but especially Tedero and McMillan. And then I'm fading the defenses. I couldn't really find a position player to fade. If I had to reach for one, it would be Tommy Tremble, just because I don't know how many people are actually starting him, and we only have 2 teams on bye, so it's not like it's like more than 4 teams on bye. So I don't know. I think he can get away with Jake Tonjes being out there, Mason Taylor being out there, and starting them over Tommy Tremble. But I'm starting Tedder McMillan, and please sit both the defenses. I think Dak and Pickens and Ferguson and Javante are all in play. I think Flournoy's even in play if you need a desperate flex. So this should be a fun one to watch. Rico Dowdle revenge game against the Cowboys. It's lining up to be him getting the bulk of the carries, coming off a 206 all-time career high rushing yard game. I expect him to keep it going against this Cowboys defense because they just haven't been great against the run and running backs in general. Next up is the Seahawks at the Jaguars, another road team. Seattle favored by -1.5. Over unders 46.5. I'm starting Sam Darnold and I'm fading Zach Charbonnet. Now, I know Zach Charbonnet's kind of been their red zone work back, but I don't know. I don't have confidence in him. And if he doesn't get in the end zone, then really I think you're wasting a flex spot, but it's kind of a boom bust flex. So I'm fading him this week. And then Rams at the Ravens, another road team favored. LA Rams -7.5. Over under is 45.5. Starting Kyron Williams, and I'm fading Mark Andrews. Talked about Mark Andrews earlier. And then Kyron Williams, I think they could lean on the ground game more than they did in previous weeks, just because this Ravens run defense has been so bad and their pass defense has been bad as well. So fire up Kyron Williams with confidence this week. I also like Devontae Adams easily, Puka Nacua you're starting, and then Matthew Stafford. Love him this week. He will probably be my start of the week at the quarterback position. Afternoon slate is up next, and it is the Titans at the Raiders. Las Vegas is at home, and they're favored by -3.5. Over under is 40.5. Like I said, the total is the second lowest total behind the Browns at the Steelers. So that poses well for both defenses in daily fantasy leagues. I'm starting Ashton Genty, and I'm fading Cam Ward this week. Cam Ward, we haven't really seen him get going yet. Hopefully, he gets going towards the end of the year, but as of right now, he really hasn't been a top 20 quarterback. So definitely do not play him. And I'd caution even playing him in super flex leagues. He's like borderline. Uh, he's not even really a QB2 because he's been like QB 24 to QB 30, and it just hasn't been great for him so far. So stash him, but I wouldn't hold on to him in one quarterback leagues. You really don't need him. Only in super flex and dynasty leagues. Bengals at the Packers is up next. Green Bay is favored by -14.5. Over under is 44.5. I'm definitely starting Tucker Craft this week, and I'm fading Chase Brown. This Packers run defense hopefully will rebound from the before the bye week when they didn't play so well against the Cowboys in general as a defense. So hopefully this is a get right game for that Packers defense at home in Lambeau. They'll be playing Joe Flacco, and I expect Micah Parsons to get home a couple of times against non-mobile Joe Flacco. And the Bengals O-line has not been good. That's what got Joe Burrow injured. That's what's kept Chase Brown, I think, from performing at all. So definitely fading Chase Brown yet again until I see more. Maybe Joe Flacco is the answer that the Bengals needed. I don't know, but I'm not trusting that this week. Fire up the Packers defense, their top defense for me this week. Next up is 49ers at the Bucks. Tampa Bay is favored by -2.5. Over unders 47.5. I'm starting Rashad White. He is my start of the week at the running back position. And then fade the Bucks defense. I think the Niners do well. Even without Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings, we saw him do well last week against the Rams, who had a pretty good defense. The Bucks defense is banged up. I think the Niners are going to have a field day out there as the Seahawks did last week. They do have to go on the road, so that could be a challenge. But Mac Jones is comfortable in Florida, as we saw when he was in Jacksonville. So this should be a good game, and I honestly think the Niners can pull this one out on the road in Tampa Bay. Sunday night football, probably the matchup of the week. Lions at the Chiefs. Kansas City's favored by -2.5. Over under is 52.5. I'm starting Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs. I would consider firing up David Montgomery as a flex. Sam Laporta, probably a solid tight end start. And then I'm fading Isaiah Pacheco. Just don't trust him at all. I would rather pick up Rashad Smith and just hold him. You don't have to start him unless you want to, and you have to. But I would rather hold on to him than hold on to Isaiah Pacheco. I just don't like what I've seen from him so far this year. Monday night doubleheader is wrapping this up. Bills at Falcons, Buffalo -4.5. And then the over-under is 49.5. I'm starting Dalton Kincaid and I'm fading Kyle Pitts unless Darnell Mooney's out. If Darnell Mooney is out, Kyle Pitts will be the number 2 target for Michael Penix. And even though the Bills have been good against tight ends, if he's the number 2 target for Michael Penix, I think he's going to get enough looks that he could produce a good fantasy value, and he would be considered a very low tight end one for me, kind of boom bust potential. Then the final game on the slate, Bears at Commanders, rematch from last year. Hopefully the Bears, we saw the Hail Mary last year. Hopefully it doesn't happen to them again. But I'm starting DeAndre Swift. I also kind of like DJ Moore this week. I think he could have a good bounce back week. They did have a bye week, so hopefully this offense kind of gelled together during the bye week. Ben Johnson got some good game plans going, and I think they could easily beat Washington on the road here. I'm fading Zach Ertz, not loving him this week. I'd rather start Jake Tonjes over him. And this is another game where the over-under is high. So is the Bills at Falcons. So it should be a fun Monday night with both these over-unders, such high totals. And that's going to do it for the weekly preview for all the games. So let's recap. We went over the start, sits, sleepers, and busts. Then went over some daily fantasy targets, fades, stacks, cheap plays, and my lineup of the week that could possibly change. Full lineup will be out on Saturday. And then around the league, we went starting off in London and finishing off in Washington. We went through all the games this week. Keep in mind the Vikings are on bye and the Texans are on bye. Those are the only 2 teams on bye. So if you need streaming options, definitely look out for those 2 teams in your lineup and make sure you have the streaming options available. Like I said, Troy Franklin, if he's out there, he could be a good streaming option this week. Jake Tonjes at the tight end position could be a good streaming option. As far as running back goes, it's going to be tough, but I would say maybe if one of the Chargers running backs is out there, that could be a good option, but there may not be much out there. Definitely look out for Kendre Miller if Alvin Kamara somehow is not able to go this week. He's been limited. I haven't seen a report that shows that he might play. I don't know. I have to look and wait until that I see that, but I haven't seen that yet. So definitely, if Kendre Miller's out there, I think he's worth the stash in your league if you need help at the running back position. So thank you guys for listening to the BA Sports Podcast. Week 6 preview. The Giants just beat the Eagles, so that was exciting. And Cam Scadaboo, what a night for him. Hopefully you picked him up in your leagues this year because, my goodness, he looks like a stud. So Until week 7, I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. Get the win in your fantasy league and set some great fantasy lineups. Stay tuned for Sunday morning. We're going to be going over some starts, sits that morning, and then stay on the lookout for the start, sits, sleepers, and bust through the weekly matchup analysis of every game with all my game picks. I'm hoping to rebound after a bad week last week on the picks, pick wise, but we've been good throughout the season, previous couple weeks. So let's get a win in week 6. And I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. Looking forward to the week 7 preview next week. And yeah, you all take care.